let's talk about something else, which is about low emission zones. And a low emission zone comes into force in Aberdeen on the same day as Edinburgh. Enforcement in Dundee is going to begin on Thursday. And this is after Glasgow became the first city in Scotland where a low emission zone was enforced. That was on the 1st of June last year, so almost exactly a year ago. Glasgow City Council received over £1 million in penalty charge payments for the zone in its first 10 months. Well, let's talk to Alan Miller, who is co-founder of the Together Declaration. Alan, there's so many motorists who feel that they have just been absolutely victimised by these low emission zones, and that they're paying hand over fist not just for petrol or to charge their car if they have an electric car, but also to drive in their own city.
Absolutely, Peter. Well, we've seen that these impositions that nobody asked for, they weren't called for. They've been imposed across cities now, across Scotland and across the United Kingdom. A lot of very wealthy green billionaires and so-called grassroots campaigners, but have been pushing and advocating and getting local authorities to do this. What this actually means for people is surveillance. It means limits. It means restrictions. It does not mean that the potholes are being fixed. It does not mean that money are going back into services. It's really an attack on car owners, as you say. We should know, Peter, that as well as in the Midlands, where many people have not paid, over 1 million people with ULEZ have been slapped with fines, but 7 out of 10 now have refused to pay. There's huge fury at the impositions that have not been democratically arrived at. We haven't had a proper cost-benefit analysis and discussion about urban planning and transport and logistics and traffic management schemes. And we've seen in Glasgow, it's had terrible impact on hospitality and retail. Some traders saying up to 50% of their business has been impacted. We've seen official records of anywhere between 20% more recently to pre-COVID levels, which we know that COVID really impacted things significantly as well. So across the board, this is having an impact on our city centres. It's a very problematic moment now for many in not just Edinburgh, but in Aberdeen and Dundee, as you say.
It's spreading, isn't it? There are lots of different parts, and I'm sure a lot of pen pushers in places like Glasgow, Edinburgh, Aberdeen, all these kind of places are looking to other cities, Birmingham, London, all these low emission zones, thinking actually you can use wanting cleaner air as an excuse to raise a lot of money. But actually you say, and I agree with you, Alan, that this hasn't been properly thought through and that there's been a lot of imposition on this. But I suppose you could argue actually that in London, the low emission zone, the ULEZ, which was such a big issue in one of those by-elections, Uxbridge and South Ruislip, actually didn't seem to be nearly as big an issue in the London mayoral election, which of course the Labour candidate and mayor, Sadiq Khan, won a third term.
He did win a third term. We know that a huge amount of people haven't turned out to vote. They're disgusted. And that's obviously not good if you think that, if you're keen on getting things changed. But over 60% of people did not vote. And obviously, when it comes to an election like that, people vote for all sorts of things. Many people are still furious about ULEZ. We know that 70% of the people who've got these fines have not paid them. TfL's stats have just come out. I think the other thing to note about all of this, Peter, is that many areas have had to take some of these measures out. We've seen it with low traffic neighbourhoods. We've seen that in the Midlands. Many have had their appeals upheld against paying these measures. And we need to think all round. What kind of cities do we want? How do we want our retail, our hospitality, our businesses? How do we want to have our mobility? Do we want to have restrictions that are having cameras?
Some people would say they want clean air, Alan, and
yeah.
I know you're not against that necessarily.
Well, that would be great.
Who is? But that's not what this is about, is it?
Yeah. Well, our air has improved over the last 3 decades radically, and on every metric, on international comparisons, Britain is at the top. Ironically, with some of the measures that were passed in Glasgow and LTN as well, some of that went up a tiny bit. No one could really fathom out why it is, because obviously what happens is where some measures are taken, if you push out traffic, then it can congregate in a certain area, which is what's happened across Britain.
Well, you just push if it's a problem, you just push the problem away. Alan,
but I just want to address this point you said. We, as the elections come up, it's very important that people do have their say, not just in an election, but getting involved locally, regionally, nationally. Get involved. Togetherdeclaration.org. We've got grassroots organisations all around the country. We'd love to have your viewers involved with us.
All right, Alan, thank you very much. Alan Miller there, co-founder of the Together Declaration. Appreciate that.